The wind blew across the broken field, carrying dust and smoke. Machines that once walked like giants now lay in pieces. The ground was full of black scars, as if fire had eaten the soil. Between the wrecks, a man crawled slowly. His name was Sam, and he was the last human left alive on this battlefield. Sam pressed one hand against his side. Blood slipped through his fingers. His ship had been hit during the last attack, and when it crashed, the impact had thrown him far. Now his ribs ached and his leg was cut open. Every breath hurt. He did not know how much longer he could move. The night was falling. The sky, painted with smoke and stars, stretched above him. He could hear distant echoes of engines. Somewhere far, alien troops were still hunting. He had no weapon left, only a broken blade from the wreckage. He pulled himself behind a piece of metal, shaking from the cold air and the pain. He thought this might be his end. Sam closed his eyes for a moment. His thoughts drifted back to Earth. He remembered the smell of rain, the warmth of sunlight on stone, the sound of laughter. He had joined the exploration fleet to see the stars, to prove that humans could stand among them. But here he was, alone on a foreign world, bleeding and weak. A sound broke his thoughts. Soft steps, careful and steady, moved across the debris. His heart pounded. He tried to grip the broken blade tighter, though his hand trembled. Shadows moved in the smoke. Then through the haze, a tall figure appeared. She was not human. Her form was slim, her skin pale with faint silver markings that caught the light of the moons above. Her eyes glowed faintly like deep pools reflecting starlight. She wore broken armor, and a strange spear rested across her back. Sam recognized the shape of her armor. It belonged to the enemy. He froze, waiting for the end. If she struck, he had no strength to fight back. His chest rose and fell as he tried to breathe quietly. The figure stepped closer. She looked down at him, her head tilting slightly as if studying some strange creature. Sam raised the broken blade. His voice came out hoarse. "Stay back." For a moment, silence hung in the air. The alien did not move. Then, to his surprise, she crouched down slowly. From her pack, she pulled a small flask made of dark metal. She set it on the ground and pushed it toward him. The flask slid over the dirt until it touched his hand. Sam blinked, confused. He looked at her, then at the flask. Inside, he could hear liquid moving. Water. His throat burned with thirst. But suspicion held him still. Why would she help him? Was this a trick? The alien watched him closely. Her eyes softened, and she placed her own hand against her chest. She spoke, but her words were not human. The sound was gentle, flowing like a song. Sam could not understand, but something in her tone carried no threat. It was calm, almost soothing. His hand shook as he lifted the flask. He brought it to his lips and drank. The water was cool and it slid down his throat like life itself. For a moment, his fear eased. He lowered the flask and breathed heavily. The alien nodded, as if pleased. Sam muttered weakly, "Why? Why are you doing this?" She tilted her head again, then pointed at his wound. Slowly, carefully, she reached toward him. Sam tensed, holding the blade tight, but she stopped and waited. Her hand hovered above his side, open and patient. She was asking for permission. He studied her. Her eyes were not cold like the soldiers who had attacked his fleet. They held something different, something almost human. Trust came hard, but he had no choice. With a slow breath, he lowered the blade and let her approach. She pulled out a strip of cloth from her armor. With steady hands, she pressed it against his wound. The pain made Sam grit his teeth, but he did not push her away. She worked carefully, wrapping the cloth around his side to stop the bleeding. Her fingers were firm but gentle. When she finished, she sat back on her heels. Her silver markings glowed faintly in the moonlight. She said something again in her language, her tone calm and low. Sam did not understand, but he felt the meaning. She was telling him he was safe for now. They sat in silence for a while. Sam's body felt heavier, but the bleeding slowed. His eyes grew heavy with exhaustion. The alien did not leave. She sat nearby, her spear across her knees, watching the shadows around them. She seemed to guard him. Through half-closed eyes, Sam studied her face. He thought about how strange it was. Only hours ago, her kind had been the enemy. Yet here she was, keeping him alive. The galaxy was full of battles, but in this small moment, there was peace. The night deepened. Sam drifted in and out of sleep, his mind foggy. Each time he woke, he saw her still there, unmoving like a sentinel. Once he heard her hum softly, a sound like a lullaby. It calmed the fear that had lived in his chest since the crash. When dawn touched the horizon, Sam opened his eyes again. The sky was painted with pale light and the smoke had thinned. His body still hurt, but he was alive. He turned his head and saw her watching the sunrise. She looked almost human in that moment, her eyes reflecting the golden glow. Sam tried to speak. His voice was weak. "Who are you?" She turned toward him. Her lips moved as she spoke her name slowly, carefully, so he could understand. "Aaron," he repeated softly. "Aaron." Her eyes warmed, and she gave a small nod. Then she touched her chest again and said the name once more. Sam realized she was teaching him to remember. For the first time since the crash, Sam felt something other than despair.
He felt a thin thread of hope.
He was not alone anymore. The second day began with a quiet stillness. Smoke had lifted from the battlefield, leaving behind broken machines and shattered weapons scattered across the land. The sun rose weakly through a thin veil of dust, painting the sky a pale gray. Sam lay on his back against the wreckage of his ship, wrapped in cloth that Aaron had tied around his wounds. His body ached, but his breathing was easier now. Aaron was sitting a few steps away. She had not slept through the night. Her spear rested beside her, her sharp eyes watching the horizon for any sign of movement. When Sam stirred, she turned her head slightly, her gaze softening. Sam tried to sit up. Pain struck through his ribs, but he forced himself to lean against a piece of twisted metal. His lips were dry. "Water," he whispered. Aaron reached into her pack and handed him the flask. He drank slowly, each sip easing the dryness in his throat. When he was done, he returned the flask to her with trembling hands. He looked at her carefully. Her armor was cracked. Her shoulder bore scratches, and her eyes carried shadows of exhaustion. She was not only helping him, she herself had been through battles. Sam spoke softly. "Why are you still here?" Erin tilted her head. She placed her hand over her chest again and said, "Aaron." Then she pointed at him. "Sam," he answered weakly. Her lips curved slightly, almost like a faint smile. She repeated his name slowly. "Sam." It was simple, but in that moment something invisible passed between them. Two lives, once enemies, now tied by a fragile thread of trust. Aaron rose to her feet and motioned for him to stay where he was. She slung her spear across her back and walked away from the wreckage. Sam's chest tightened as he watched her go. Part of him feared she would leave and never return. Alone, he would not last a day. Minutes felt like hours. The wind whispered across the field, carrying the smell of burned metal. Finally, Sam heard footsteps again. Aaron returned, carrying a bundle of roots and strange fruits in her hands. She placed them carefully beside him. She broke one of the roots in half and chewed it first, showing him it was safe. Then she offered him the other half. Sam took it and chewed slowly. The taste was bitter, but it filled his empty stomach with warmth. Food, water, and bandages. In the middle of a war, she was giving him the things he needed most. Sam looked at her curiously. "You could have left me." "Why didn't you?" Aaron did not understand all his words, but she seemed to catch his meaning. She tapped the ground between them, then placed her hand over her chest again. She spoke in her flowing tongue, the sound like quiet music. Though Sam could not understand the language, her voice carried a message. She would not abandon him. As the sun climbed higher, the silence of the field broke. In the distance, faint roars echoed. The sound of alien patrol ships searching for survivors. Sam's heart raced. He gripped the broken blade that lay beside him. If they found him, he had no chance. Aaron stood quickly. She motioned for him to stay low. Moving with quiet grace, she scanned the field. Then she crouched beside him, pressing a finger against her lips, a gesture he could understand. The sound grew closer. Engines hummed above the wreckage. Shadows passed across the ground as small patrol drones swept over the area. Sam held his breath, every muscle tight. Aaron did not hide behind the wreckage. Instead, she stood tall, walking calmly into the open. She raised her spear and moved her body with steady confidence, as if she belonged there. The drones scanned her armor and passed without alarm. To them, she was only another soldier of their kind. Sam stayed hidden, heart pounding. When the sound faded into the distance, Aaron returned to him. Her calm face showed no fear. She knelt beside him and touched his arm gently.
A silent way of saying he was safe again. For the first time,
Sam realized she had not only saved his life, she had risked her own to protect him. Later that day, Sam tried to move his injured leg. He pushed himself upright, leaning against the wreckage for support. Pain tore through him and he fell back, groaning. Aaron rushed to his side, steadying him with firm hands. "I need to walk," he muttered, though she could not understand. He pointed to his legs and then gestured forward. Aaron frowned slightly, shaking her head. She pressed him back against the wreckage as if telling him he was not ready. But Sam was stubborn. He tried again, pushing himself up, using a piece of metal as a crutch. His legs shook and sweat ran down his face, but he managed 2 steps before collapsing. Erin caught him before he hit the ground. She lowered him gently, her eyes full of frustration and concern. She spoke quickly in her tongue, the words sharp but not cruel. Though Sam could not understand, he knew what she meant. You are not ready. Stop hurting yourself. He gave a small laugh, weak and tired. You sound like my mother. Erin tilted her head, confused by his words, but his laugh seemed to soften her expression. She shook her head, then began to prepare a small fire using broken scraps of metal and dry grass. She worked with calm skill, showing him she had survived alone before. Night came again. The stars shone brighter now that the smoke had lifted. Sam lay wrapped in his makeshift bandages, watching Erin across the fire. She was sharpening her spear with a stone, her movement steady and precise. Erin, Sam said softly. She lifted her head and met his gaze. He pointed at her, then tapped his chest. Friend, she blinked, studying his gesture. Slowly she repeated it, pointing at him, then touching her chest. Friend. Her voice shaped the word carefully, as if tasting it for the first time. A warmth spread through Sam's chest. It was a small step, but it meant everything. The following morning, Erin led him away from the wreckage. She supported him with one arm as he limped forward. Step by step they moved across the broken field. Sam gritted his teeth against the pain, but he refused to stop. As they walked, Sam noticed the way Erin scanned the horizon, always alert. She moved with the instinct of someone who had lived too long in danger. He wondered about her story. Why had she helped him when the rest of her kind saw humans as weak? They reached the edge of the battlefield where jagged rocks rose like teeth from the earth. Between the rocks there was shade and cover, a place safer than the open field. Erin guided him there, helping him sit against the stone. She placed a hand over her chest and spoke again, this time slower. Erin, no war. She pointed at herself, then shook her head firmly. No war. Sam's eyes widened. He understood her meaning. She had left the fight. She was not his enemy anymore. She was a deserter, just as lost as he was. He whispered, Then we are the same. Erin did not understand the words, but she saw the way his face softened. She gave a small nod, as if agreeing to a silent truth between them. That night, as the fire crackled low, Sam found himself staring at the stars. They glittered in endless numbers, stretching across the sky like a river of light. He remembered why humans had come to the stars in the first place, to explore, to prove they were not alone. Now, here he was, a single human on a strange world, kept alive by someone who should have been his enemy. He glanced at Erin. She was humming softly again, her voice like a distant song. It echoed gently through the rocks, calm and strange yet comforting. Sam closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. For the first time since the crash, he did not feel like a dying soldier. He felt like someone who still had a chance to live. The bond between them was still fragile, but it was real. Sam knew his wounds would not heal overnight, and danger was still all around. Yet he also knew one truth. He was no longer alone. And in the quiet glow of the fire, the human and the alien deserter began to build something rare in the galaxy. Not war, not fear, but the beginning of trust. The days passed slowly, each one marked by pain, hunger, and the endless struggle to survive. Sam's wounds healed little by little thanks to Erin's care. She cleaned his injuries with bitter herbs, wrapped them again with fresh cloth, and hunted small animals among the rocks. Still, the infection grew worse. His skin grew pale, his body hot with fever. Sam tried to hide his weakness, but Erin could see it clearly. She watched him closely each time he coughed or struggled to rise. Her face, usually calm and unreadable, began to show worry. One evening, as the orange glow of sunset painted the jagged stones, Sam collapsed while trying to gather wood for the fire. His body gave up and he fell hard against the ground. His breath came shallow and his vision blurred. Erin was at his side instantly. She lifted him gently and placed him against the rocks. She touched his forehead and felt the heat burning under his skin. Her heart clenched. The human who had once been only a stranger was now something more. She could not let him die. That night, Sam drifted in and out of sleep, his mind filled with fragments of memory. He saw the oceans of Earth, the blue sky, and the faces of people he had loved. He whispered names softly, though Erin could not understand them. Erin sat close, her hand on his arm, trying to comfort him. She whispered in her own tongue, words of strength and promises she hoped he could feel even if he could not understand. When his fever worsened, she knew she could not wait. She left him with the small fire glowing and set out into the darkness. The night was cold and the land stretched endlessly, but she had seen healing herbs before, rare plants that grew near streams under moonlight. She moved quickly, her spear ready, every sound in the dark making her tense. Shadows shifted across the rocks and the distant cry of some beast echoed. Yet she did not stop. Every step forward was for him. Hours passed before she found what she needed. Small flowers with glowing blue petals rose from cracks in the stone, their scent sharp and bitter. She gathered them quickly, crushing them into a paste with a stone bowl she carried. By the time she returned, the fire had almost burned out. Sam lay still, his breathing shallow. Erin rushed to him, placing the paste gently against his wound. He groaned weakly, his eyes opening for a moment to see her face. "Erin," he whispered faintly. Her heart ached to hear his voice so weak. She held his hand and whispered back, "Sam." The fever did not leave quickly. Days blended into nights and Erin did not sleep. She fed him drops of water, held his hand and kept the fire alive. She hummed soft songs of her people, songs meant to carry courage through long nights of war. At times she feared she was too late. His eyes closed for too long, and his chest rose so slowly that she thought he had stopped breathing. Yet each time he held on. One stormy night, thunder shook the ground and rain poured across the rocks. Sam lay weak, his voice nothing but a whisper. I cannot go on." Erin shook her head fiercely. She pressed her forehead to his, her silver markings glowing faintly with the storm's light. She spoke in her language, her words steady and strong. Then she kissed him gently, a soft touch of her lips against his. Among her people, this was no simple act. It was a bond, a promise that their lives would not be separate again. When she pulled back, her voice struggled with human words. "Now you, never be alone again, human." Sam's eyes opened slowly. He had not understood her language before, but these words reached him. They were broken, rough, yet filled with meaning. A spark lit in his chest. His body still ached, but the weight of despair lifted. He was not abandoned. With weak fingers, he gripped her hand. He whispered, "Thank you." The days after the storm brought change. Sam's fever began to break. His strength returned little by little, enough for him to sit upright again. He watched Erin prepare food, her movements graceful even in simple tasks. For the first time, he noticed the quiet beauty of her silver markings. They shimmered in the sun like threads of light. Her eyes, once sharp and distant, now carried warmth whenever they met his. He thought back to the kiss. It had not been like the ones humans shared in comfort or desire. It was deeper, something sacred to her. He felt its meaning even without words. She had tied her life to his. Sam spoke one evening as the stars rose. Back home, people would not believe this. They would not believe a human and an alien could stand side by side. Erin tilted her head, listening even if she did not understand. She repeated one word softly, "Home." Sam nodded. "Yes, home." Her eyes softened, and for a moment he wondered what her home had been like before the war. He wanted to ask her, but he knew her language could not carry all the answers. Instead, he gave a weak smile, and she returned it with one of her own. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Sam taught her small words in human language. Water, fire, sky, friend. She repeated them carefully, sometimes mispronouncing, sometimes laughing softly when he corrected her. In return, she showed him the constellations of her people, drawing them in the dirt with her spear. At night, they shared stories, each in their own tongue. Though they could not understand every word, they listened, filling the silence with the sound of trust. Yet danger never left. Patrols still roamed the skies, searching for deserters and survivors. Twice they had to hide among the rocks, Erin shielding Sam with her body as drones passed overhead. Each time they survived, their bond only deepened. One afternoon, as Sam tried walking with the help of a long branch, he looked at Erin and spoke quietly. "I would not be alive without you." Erin studied his face. She did not need to know the words. She could see the truth in his eyes. She touched her chest and then touched his. A silent way of saying their lives were now bound. Sam nodded slowly, his throat tight. "Yes, together. She repeated the words softly, almost like a vow. Together, but not all nights were peaceful. As they rested near a cave, Sam woke to the sound of engines. A patrol ship hovered above, its lights sweeping the rocks. He froze, panic rising. If they were found, it would be the end. Aaron stood quickly, her spear ready. She motioned for him to stay low. The ship passed slowly, its lights searching every shadow. Sam's heart pounded as the beam moved closer. Aaron made her choice swiftly. She stepped into the open, drawing the patrol's light toward herself. Sam wanted to cry out, but his voice caught. The beam followed her, scanning her armor. For a long moment, silence held the air. Then, with a low hum, the ship turned and drifted away, leaving them hidden. When she returned, Sam grabbed her hand, his voice shaking. "You risked everything." She only shook her head. To her, it was simple. She had promised he would never be alone, and she would not break that vow. That night, as the fire burned low, Sam stared at her across the flames. He thought of all he had lost, the fleet, his friends, the dream of victory. But he also thought of what he had gained. In the darkest moment of his life, when he lay bleeding and ready to die, she had kissed him and given him hope. She had said he would never be alone, and for the first time since leaving Earth, he believed it. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks. Sam's body still ached, but he was stronger than the day before. His wounds were nearly healed, and his legs carried him with more confidence. Each step reminded him of how fragile life could be, but also how determined he had become to survive. Aaron walked beside him, her silver markings catching the sunlight. She scanned the horizon constantly, her eyes sharp and alert. Though she had saved him before, she knew danger was never far. The war was still raging, and deserters like them were easy targets. Despite the constant threat, Sam felt a growing courage. Aaron's presence was more than protection. It was inspiration. She moved with purpose, confident in her skills, and he began to believe he could stand beside her. Together, they were no longer two victims of the battlefield. They were partners. Their journey led them across wide stretches of broken land. Smoke still lingered over destroyed machines and craters that had once been alive with battle. Sam and Aaron moved carefully, avoiding the main paths where patrols might pass. They ate what they could find, small plants, fruits, and occasional animals Aaron hunted. Sam watched her hunt with fascination. She moved with perfect balance, silent and precise. One moment she was a shadow. The next she had captured her prey with a single spear throw. She shared it with him, cutting the meat into small pieces and teaching him how to eat it safely. "You are fast," Sam said, trying to make her smile. Aaron tilted her head and gave a small nod. She tapped her chest and then pointed at Sam. It was her way of saying, "You are learning too." They laughed softly, a sound neither had heard in weeks. For a brief moment, the battlefield seemed less like a place of death and more like a place where life could grow. As they traveled, Sam began teaching Aaron small songs from his home world. At first she could not understand the words, but she enjoyed the rhythm and melody. She repeated the syllables carefully, her tongue learning the strange human sounds. Sam smiled whenever she succeeded, and she smiled back when he clapped softly in encouragement. One night they rested near a shallow stream. Sam watched the stars reflected in the water, while Aaron traced patterns in the sand with her spear. He noticed how her silver markings glowed faintly in the moonlight, giving her a soft, magical presence. "You are beautiful," he whispered quietly, almost afraid she might not understand. Aaron looked up, meeting his gaze. She tilted her head slightly, then touched her chest and his in a gentle gesture. Sam felt warmth spread through him. Words were not needed. Their connection was stronger than any language, but danger still followed them. On the fourth day, while crossing a narrow canyon, they heard the faint hum of patrol engines overhead. Sam froze, fear rising in his chest. Aaron immediately assessed the situation. She spotted a small crevice in the canyon wall that could hide them. Without hesitation, she guided Sam into the narrow space, shielding him with her body. The patrol passed above, scanning every inch of the canyon floor. Sam's heart pounded as he watched her, awed by her courage. She did not flinch or panic. She was calm, precise, and focused. He realized that he had learned from her strength. Without Aaron, he would have frozen in fear. With her, he had hope. When the patrol moved away, Aaron helped him out of the crevice. Sam grabbed her hand, his voice shaking. "You saved me again," she shook her head. To her, it was simple. They had promised to protect each other. That was all that mattered. As they continued their journey, Sam began to notice the subtle changes in himself. He walked taller, breathed deeper, and moved with more confidence. Each time he stumbled, Erin was there to steady him. Each time he doubted himself, her presence reminded him that he was not alone. They began to talk more, even if the language was imperfect. Sam pointed to the sky, trying to teach her the names of the planets. Erin drew symbols in the dirt, showing him constellations from her world. Though they could not understand every word, the act of sharing made them closer. Sam realized that trust was more than survival. It was the belief that someone cared for you. Someone would stand with you even when the world was against you. Erin had given him that trust, and he would not betray it. One evening they reached the edge of a high cliff. Below, the land stretched endlessly, dotted with forests and rivers that glimmered in the fading sunlight. Sam stood at the edge, looking out at the horizon. He felt a mixture of awe and fear. The world was vast, full of unknown dangers, yet full of possibilities. Erin came beside him, her hand brushing lightly against his. Sam looked at her and felt a surge of gratitude. She had carried him through pain, protected him from death, and now stood beside him as a friend and companion. "I never thought I would see a place like this," Sam said softly. Erin tilted her head, listening. He repeated the gesture, pointing at the land, then tapping his chest. He was trying to share the feeling that this was a new beginning. She nodded slowly, understanding without words. But the world was not safe. News traveled fast among the alien patrols and human fleets alike. Rumors of a human and an alien traveling together reached the ears of commanders on both sides. One morning, while they rested near a forest, Erin sensed movement before Sam did. Small patrols were searching nearby. She quickly guided Sam to a hidden hollow among the trees. Together they watched as the soldiers moved past. Unaware of the two figures hiding beneath the leaves, Sam whispered, "They are looking for us." Erin nodded and spoke quickly in her language, her gestures sharp and urgent. Though he could not understand the words, he caught the meaning. Stay quiet, stay safe. They remained hidden until the patrols moved away. Sam realized that every day they survived was because of trust, careful planning, and courage. And every day he learned more from Erin's strength. By the fifth day, Sam and Erin had traveled far from the battlefield. The landscape changed from jagged rocks to rolling hills and patches of green. The air smelled fresher here and the rivers were clearer. For the first time, Sam felt a sense of hope. He could survive. He could live. And he could do it with Erin at his side. They made a small camp near a stream. Erin gathered herbs and water, preparing a meal. Sam helped as best he could, chopping plants and collecting wood. They worked together in silence, comfortable in each other's presence. That night, as the fire burned low, Sam spoke softly. "I never thought anyone would care about me like this." Erin looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. She placed her hand on his chest again. Words were not needed. Her gesture said, "I do care." Sam smiled weakly. "Then we keep going, together." Erin repeated the word, "together," and so they did. The bond between them had grown into something unbreakable. It was no longer just survival. It was partnership, trust, and a shared hope for a future. Each day brought new challenges, yet they faced them side by side. Even when enemy patrols roamed the lands, they moved with skill and caution. Even when hunger gnawed at their bellies, they shared what little they found. And even when fear threatened to take hold, they reminded each other that they were not alone. For Sam, the lesson was clear. Humanity's strength was not just in technology or weapons. It was in courage, in the willingness to protect and care for others, and in the ability to rise together against impossible odds. And Erin had shown him all of that. By the end of the week, Sam and Erin reached the edge of a valley, wide and open, filled with grass and small trees. It was a place where they could rest safely, away from the battlefield and patrols. Sam stood and looked at the land, feeling the first true sense of freedom in weeks. Erin came to his side, her hand brushing lightly against his. They did not speak, but the connection between them was stronger than words. They had survived the battlefield. They had survived the storm. And they had survived the doubts and fears that had tried to claim them. Together, they were rising, not just as survivors, but as something greater. The valley was quiet, filled with tall grass that swayed in the gentle breeze. Birds called from the trees and small streams sparkled in the sunlight. For the first time since the crash, Sam felt the world was not a battlefield. It was alive and full of possibilities. Erin stood beside him, her silver markings glowing faintly in the morning light. She had become his guide, his protector, and his friend. They had survived together, and in that time Sam realized that she had also become something more, a symbol of hope in a galaxy filled with fear. But the war was never far away. Reports traveled faster than they expected. Even in this valley, danger loomed. Rumors of a human traveling with an alien deserter had reached nearby soldiers, and they were determined to find them. One morning, while Sam collected water from a stream, he noticed the shadow of a patrol ship moving over the valley. His heart raced, but Erin was already aware. She held up her hand, signaling him to stop. Calmly, she scanned the surroundings. "They are close," Sam whispered, his voice tense. Erin nodded and pointed to a hidden grove nearby. She gestured for him to follow and led him through narrow paths between the trees. The patrol ship passed above without noticing them, and Sam felt relief wash over him. But he knew the danger was not gone. They would not stop searching. They needed a plan, not just to hide, but to stand if they were found. Over the next few days, Sam and Erin prepared. They moved carefully, studying the terrain and learning to anticipate enemy movements. Sam observed Erin closely, trying to understand her strategies. She was quick, intelligent, and fearless. Each lesson he learned from her made him stronger. One evening, as they rested by a campfire, Sam spoke quietly. "We cannot run forever. They will find us." Erin looked at him. Her eyes were steady, calm. She touched his chest gently and spoke in her language. Though he could not understand every word, the meaning was clear. When danger comes, stand together. Sam nodded, feeling the truth of her words. Together, they could face anything. The following day, their patience was tested. A group of enemy soldiers appeared on the edge of the valley, moving carefully as if they knew something was hidden. Sam's heart pounded, but Erin was ready. She whispered instructions in her tongue, guiding him to a narrow pass between the hills. They waited, hidden among rocks. The soldiers advanced, unaware of the two figures lying in wait. Sam gripped his makeshift spear, ready to defend himself. Erin looked at him, her eyes meeting his. There was no fear, only trust. Sam drew strength from her presence. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. When the soldiers entered the valley, Sam and Erin sprang into action. Using the terrain to their advantage, they moved quickly and precisely. Erin's spear struck with perfect accuracy, while Sam used his knowledge of the land to create obstacles and distractions. The fight was intense but brief. Sam and Erin's unity gave them strength beyond what either could have achieved alone. The enemy, unprepared for such cooperation, was forced to retreat. Sam watched them flee, his chest rising and falling with exhilaration. He turned to Erin, eyes wide with awe. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with disbelief and relief. Erin only nodded, her expression calm but proud. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory. Sam felt warmth and gratitude. He realized that this was more than survival. This was the human spirit, resilient, determined, and unyielding even in the face of overwhelming odds. That night, as they sat by the fire, Sam reflected on their journey. He thought about the battlefield, the crash, and the days of pain and fear. But he also thought about Erin, her courage, and the bond they had formed. Without her, he would have been lost. He reached out and took her hand. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice soft. "For everything." Erin looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. She touched her chest and then his, a gesture of trust and connection. Words were unnecessary. The bond they shared spoke louder than any language. Sam smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had never known. For the first time, he truly understood the meaning of hope and companionship. The following days were quieter. Sam and Erin explored the valley, learning its secrets. They discovered hidden streams, small caves for shelter, and abundant plants for food and medicine. Each discovery brought a sense of accomplishment and freedom. Sam began to teach Erin more about human life, how to cook simple meals, how to recognize edible plants, and how to move silently in the dark. Erin taught him the ways of her people, their songs, constellations, and skills for survival. Through this exchange, they learned not only to survive, but to thrive. Their bond grew stronger with every shared lesson, every smile, and every moment of trust. One afternoon, they spotted a group of humans on the horizon. Sam froze, unsure if they were friends or enemies. Erin studied them carefully, her hand resting on her spear. She spoke in her language, and though Sam could not understand, he felt her reassurance. As the humans approached, Sam realized they were members of a rescue team sent to search for survivors of the fleet. Relief and joy flooded him. He turned to Erin, his eyes shining. "We are saved." Erin smiled faintly, but her gaze remained calm. She had no need for rescue. Her strength had carried them this far. The rescue team reached them, bringing food, medicine, and words of encouragement. Sam tried to explain Erin's role, but words felt inadequate. How could he describe an alien's courage, her kindness, and the bond they had formed? Erin watched silently as Sam spoke, her presence steady and composed. She had chosen to stand with a human, not out of obligation, but because she believed in him. That choice had changed both their lives forever. As they prepared to leave the valley, Sam looked back one last time. The place that had been a refuge, a battlefield, and a home in turns stretched out behind him. He realized that he had grown stronger, not just in body but in spirit. Erin walked beside him, her hand brushing his lightly. No words were needed. Their journey had forged a connection that would endure beyond the valley, beyond the battlefield, and beyond the reaches of the galaxy. Sam understood now that humanity's strength was not in machines or weapons alone. It was in courage, trust, and the ability to rise together. He had learned that lesson in the most extraordinary way possible, with Erin by his side. As the rescue ship lifted off the valley floor, Sam and Erin looked down at the land. The grass swayed, the river sparkled, and the sunlight glimmered off the rocks. The world was alive, full of challenges, but also full of hope. Sam turned to Erin. "We survived. Together." Erin touched her chest and then his. "Together," she repeated. In that moment, Sam knew that no matter where life took them, they would face it side by side. The human spirit, resilient and determined, had triumphed, not through violence or conquest, but through courage, trust, and compassion. Years later, stories of a human and an alien who stood united spread across the galaxy. Tales of their courage inspired both humans and aliens alike. People whispered of the bond that crossed worlds and cultures, reminding everyone that hope and unity could overcome even the darkest times. Sam often thought back to that first day on the battlefield, the day he was wounded and alone. He remembered the pain, the fear, and the despair, but most of all, he remembered the kiss, the words, and the promise that he would never be alone again. Erin had saved him then, and she continued to stand by his side. Together they had risen above the war, above the fear, and above the odds. Together they had proven that life, courage, and trust were stronger than any weapon or enemy. And in that truth, Sam found the ultimate victory, the victory of the human spirit.